And a good morning, Birds fan. How are ya? It is Birds 365 right here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. You got your Mac and Mac guys here hanging with you for the next couple hours. Jody McDonald, Johnny McMullen. How are you this morning, JM?
Doing well, Jody. A little bit Ben Simmons hangover, hanging on a little bit. Not for me, but for certain other people that shall remain nameless. That's our boy Xander, our executive producer.
He's not happy with Ben Simmons or Doc Rivers, and I think there's a big difference between the two. I did 4 hours of Sixers post-mortem last night on WIP.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I'm not even close to being done, and this is going to go on for months and months and months. And it's funny that you bring that up because I didn't want to start there. We got a lot of Eagles stuff we're going to get to. Got 2 good guests coming your way over the course of the next 2 hours, so you do want to hang with us. One of the things that we talked about, brought up last night, I know a couple columnists here in town touched on it as well, seeing a lot of social media commentary on it. The comparison between Ben Simmons and Carson Wentz, 2 supposedly superstar players who at one juncture in their career looked like they were going to be a top player in the NFL. 2017, where Carson Wentz was probably in the lead for the MVP. It's just a personal bugaboo, bothers me. Carson Wentz was the MVP of the 2017 season before he got hurt. No, he wasn't. No one can be the MVP after 3/4 of a season. You can be in the lead. You can say it was his award to lose, but you don't win the MVP. He wasn't so far ahead that, oh my God, you still got to give it to him, even though he didn't play the last 4 games of the season. So let's just leave that. He was right there with everyone else. He could have won.
At a snapshot on December 11th of that year, he was probably going to be the MVP if he continued to play like that.
Right.
That's a big if.
But he didn't. He didn't get to play at all because he, of course, was injured. And Ben Simmons has had runs where he has been a stone-cold dominant player, one of the best players in the NBA. Where it all has gone, I don't know. But I think there is a comparison to be made. I've seen people make the comparison, and I agree with it. Some people trying to shoot it down. You can't compare football to basketball. Okay, we get that. A 53-man roster is compared to a 12-man roster. There are certain inequities between the comparison. But, I absolutely believe it is there. When you're talking about a superstar player on your team that reaches a certain level and comes careening back down to earth, and I mean from high heights to really low lows, how do you not make that comparison? What happened to Carson Wentz this year is very comparable to what we've just seen with Ben Simmons. The biggest difference for me is Ben Simmons wasn't this bad all year. He actually made the All-Star team. Now, if you listen to me on WIP, you know I said he shouldn't have made the All-Star team. The guy that should have made the All-Star team was his teammate, and I screamed from the highest yardarms. And, oh, by the way, with the way he played in the final game, I got a little trouble defending that position with Tobias Harris as well. But I still stand by, at the All-Star break, it should have been Tobias Harris, not Ben Simmons. Damn, did he fall off the face of the earth with what we just saw in that last season. Lowest free throw percentage in the history. When you are the lowest or the worst in the history of a sport, that's really bad. And yet
that's not good. And they've been playing for a while, Jody. It's not like it's a small sample size.
No, the NBA has been around for a long time. Not as long as the National Football League. But you see the comparison between what we just went through with Carson Wentz, and we know that ended with it shipping out to Indianapolis. There are really a ton of similarities between he and where we're at right now with Ben Simmons. Do you agree or disagree?
Well, I think there's 2 parts to it. From the off-the-field aspect, from the sports psychology aspect, I think it's a perfect comparison. I think it's a great comparison. On the field, you start getting into the weeds and saying, Carson was playing like an MVP. I don't think Ben Simmons ever got to that point in his career. People could talk about all-stars. And then you could say came careening down, Jody. We were talking before we got on the air. This has been consistent in the playoffs. Like I always say, the NBA regular season, you might be in Memphis Wednesday night. They might have a great plan for you. You might have a bad game. Who cares? You're on to Oklahoma City Friday night. It's forgotten about. They're not paying attention to what Memphis did, vice versa, and you just move on. So to me, the difference between the regular season, the NBA, and the playoffs is so different, so vastly different. And anybody who wasn't expecting this, you have seen this consistently with Ben Simmons. You go back to the Brett Brown era. You had Boston in the playoffs when they got bounced by Boston. He had to give T.J. McConnell minutes because Ben Simmons was taken out of it. You go back to the Jimmy Butler year. It took the Sixers too long to realize, hey, Jimmy Butler should be running this offense, especially late in games. And that was their best team, their best run in this so-called process era. Ben Simmons was completely taken out of it. And he was completely taken out of it. Now, it got even worse this year. It was even worse because of the free throw shooting. 60% went down to 32% or whatever it was. So it got worse. But this has been his story. He can't play late in games in the fourth quarter in the playoffs when people are making adjustments. The Sixers are playing 4-on-5 offensively. My point is, from a playing standpoint, Carson Wentz was great that season. The shelf life wasn't long, obviously. But from a mental, I don't know, what do you want to call it, fragility standpoint, yeah, there is a great comparison. There is a great comparison because I think Carson fell apart last season, and I think Ben Simmons, you saw him fall apart.
I hear what you're saying about the NBA's regular season as compared to the playoffs. Yes, the importance of it gets ratcheted up tenfold. Do we look at the National Football League the same way?
No.
No.
But I don't, because it's one game, Jody. Now, you get, and the NFL's always like that. I mean, they dive into game planning for week one. They're preparing for that opponent. Now, it's not as important. The stakes are not as high, but it's the same preparation process. Where in the NBA, and I would say the same thing happens in the NHL, although I'm not a hockey guy. We'll talk to Les Bowen a little bit about hockey later. I imagine the same thing happens there. Best of seven. You see the same team again and again and again and again and again, and you keep seeing them. It's hard. It is really hard. It ratchets us up to this point. When you have a one-and-done situation, look, the impact is high, the stakes are high, everybody, gets a little bit tighter. All of that is the same, but you don't have that constant repetitiveness where people can lose a game and say, okay, we're going to make these adjustments and we're going to come after Carson Wentz again next week. Obviously, you couldn't do it in a couple of days in football. Doesn't happen that way. So it's one and done versus, in the case of the Hawks and Sixers, they played each other 7 times.
Yeah, 7-game series. It is different. I will agree with that. And the other big difference between these two situations, although they just feel eerily similar to me, Carson Wentz did help facilitate. I'd say he made it happen more than anything else with his well-known desire, despite the fact that he never came out himself in front of a microphone or a camera and said, I don't want to be a Philadelphia Eagle anymore. Guys like yourself who report the news, who get inside information and have sources and the like. It was pretty well known that Carson Wentz wanted no part of staying with the Philadelphia Eagles. And I think that is probably the biggest reason that the Philadelphia Eagles traded Carson Wentz, not the fact that he went horribly backwards and had his bad year as he did. If he was still happy, if he was looking forward to playing for Nick Sirianni, I think he'd still be the Eagles quarterback. So if he hadn't forced his hand out of town, he's probably still here. Ben Simmons has not stated, either on a microphone or in front of a camera or to someone to get the information to the Sixers beat writers or whatever, that he wants to be elsewhere. He still is a Philadelphian and wants to stay as a 76er. Do you think that means it's more likely that Ben Simmons sticks around?
I don't think he'll be back, but I think the difference there is I don't think the Sixers want him back. I think they realize this isn't going to work. They're going to have to move on. So I don't even get to the part. Ultimately, I don't think Ben will want to be here. I think he'll realize that as well. He probably needs a fresh start, but we still have to go down that road. But I don't think the team has any inclination of wanting to bring him back. And we'll see. That's my speculation. That's not obviously insider info. So the Eagles wanted Carson Wentz back originally. Part of it was just, Jody, let's be honest, they didn't want to take the dead money hit. If it were a different situation and his contract was more manageable, they might have had a different decision. But ultimately, they wanted Carson Wentz back, and he didn't want to be here. So I think that story's still to be determined, but I don't even think it gets to Ben because I don't think the Sixers will want him back. I think Daryl Morey is a really, really smart basketball guy. I think he understands he's got to build a team, and he's going to build that team around Joel Embiid, not Ben Simmons. So I think he realized. I think he already realized that. He would have traded Ben Simmons during the season if he could have gotten James Harden.
Yeah, I believe that those conversations were had. Again, I have my sources. They're not as good as you and tied to the National Football League, but my NBA sources told me the Rockets were not trading James Harden to the 76ers.
Same here. It's exactly what
I was. Bad blood with Morey walking away, and their asking price as compared to what the Nets ended up paying was ridiculous. And, oh, by the way, it still might not have gotten a deal done. The Sixers may have said, yeah, okay, we'll give you what you asked for. And they said, well, let us rethink that.
Yeah.
That there was marching orders from the owner down there. Yes, engage the 76ers solely to drive the price up so that we can get the best price from the Nets. I don't think there was ever a chance that James Harden was coming here, but that's an aside. Let me ask you one other question on Simmons and Carson Wentz. We have not seen Carson Wentz in his new team. How do you think the Eagle fans are going to handle that this year? We know the whole he's got to play 70%, 75% regular season or 70% and the playoffs for the Eagles to have that number 2 draft pick next year elevated to a 1. So you have to, at least in part, you got to root for his health. I don't know how heavy-handed you will be in rooting for him in producing touchdowns as compared to interceptions and quarterback rating and whatever else. Because, yeah, it does sting a little bit when you move away from a guy who was a key contributor for you and he goes somewhere else and either recaptures the magic or elevates his game to levels he never had before. I get less worked up about that than some other people I talk to on the air, fans and the like, who just can't believe, how do we give him up? He's killing us. How did we not know this was going to happen? When you get it done, you get it done. I don't want to say you wash your hands, but you accept it. And you say, oh, he is now elsewhere. Here's what we got in return. We have to move on as an organization. He's going to do what he's going to do. I think that Eagle fans will actually have a tough time rooting for Carson Wentz above and beyond we got to get enough to get the first round draft pick. Do you think there's a fear factor that if the Sixers trade Ben Simmons, people are thinking he's going to learn how to shoot a jump shot. He's going to raise his foul shooting percentage 75%. He's going to go deep in the playoffs, and we're still going to be eliminated in the second round. How much fear is out there with Sixers fans?
Well, if you're full of that, they can calm down. That is not happening. Can he get back to being what he was as a 60% free throw shooter? Yeah, probably, hopefully, somewhere. So if that's your fear, that's a little more realistic. This guy's never going to be able to shoot the basketball in a consistent manner. He doesn't want to shoot the basketball. That's part of the problem. He doesn't want to shoot it. If he goes to a less, how shall we say, less passionate market, I think it will help him. That people have said that about Carson Wentz. You know, we had Bob Glauber on last week, who works in New York, obviously. He said Philadelphia's the most difficult, and I agree with him, sports market because of all the interest. Now, he was talking football-wise because of the Eagles. Now, you would know better than me, Jody. I think this market's very provincial. I don't think they care about anything that goes on outside the city limits of Philadelphia. So I don't think they're going to care about Carson Wentz that much during the regular season, other than health, other than keeping a status on are they going to get the first round pick. Now, if you get to the playoffs and he's playing well and it's one-off situations, standalone games on television, and I see Carson Wentz is having an MVP-like season, then they'll start to get a little bit angry. But I don't think they're going to care during the regular season. They're just focused on their team. But you would have a better indication of that than me.
Right. And I'll disagree with you slightly. You're not way off point. Flyers, oh, absolutely. The most provincial group in the entire. Once you leave Philadelphia, you're like, you move to another galaxy, and people just don't follow and don't care and don't watch. Phillies, no, they'll note and they'll call and they'll say, look at what he's doing elsewhere. Not a ton, but some. The basketball, basically the same. People still watched every move Charles Barkley made after he left and was elevating Phoenix to championship levels. And what the hell was Jimmy Lynam thinking? Oh, Eagles, yeah. Oh, yeah. Every week I would get an update from, do you realize Reggie White had 2 more sacks for the Green Bay Packers? Oh, yeah. Eagles specific. Eagle fans, it's almost like a protect. Once you put the green on, you're kind of green for life. More so than the other 3 teams here in town. I do think they are, I don't want to say more astute, but more involved, more dedicated to following what former Eagles did. And I think they will do that for Carson Wentz.
Well, I would say, let me say this, Jody. Reggie's a Hall of Fame player, maybe the greatest defensive end that ever lived. Plus, he went to a team that was really good. So that was that sort of playoff type atmosphere. If Carson's in the playoffs, I think things change a little bit from that perspective, because obviously he's been successful and maybe they start paying attention. But I mean, guys would bring up this with me with Sidney Jones and Rasul Douglas. And they, you would hear it occasionally. Sidney would make an interception. Somebody saw it on Red Zone and said, Schwartz can't get these guys to play. But they didn't. It's not like they were sitting there micromanaging and realizing, well, Rasul really, really fell off in Carolina. Sidney was hurt again in Jacksonville. I don't think it's that as the city. Now, Hall of Fame players, you mentioned Charles as well, Charles Barkley. Yeah, that's a little bit different. I mean, it hurts when you lose a Hall of Fame player. That really hurts. I don't think Carson Wentz is going to be that. If he is, yeah, there's going to be some significant angst. I would say that.
There will be many reminders. Didn't we have this guy? Wasn't Carson? Didn't we give him away to the Indianapolis Colts? Oh, yeah, we'll get a ton of that from Eagle fans. All right, Eagle fans, you want to stay tuned. We're going to have our first guest joining us next. We had him on a month or so ago, 5-6 weeks ago, and he did a great job when he came on with us. Conor Orr, writer for Sports Illustrated, one of John's colleagues and cronies, will hop aboard. We'll talk all things NFL, get his take on the Birds, but everything else that's going on in the National Football League. And as John has already mentioned, Les Bowen is going to join us. And I had no idea that Les was thinking about walking away, took a buyout from the Daily News. I've enjoyed reading Les on the Eagles for years now, and he will be missed. But he's not going to be missed here on Birds 365 because we're going to punch him up a little later on in the show. But coming up next, Conor Orr, NFL writer for Sports Illustrated, joins us here on Birds 365.
I get scared sometimes.
Of a lot of things.
Joining in.
Decisions.
The dark.
The dark.
But I once heard someone say,
but as I always say,
it's okay to be afraid.
As long as you face the fear.
And keep moving forward.
Wherever you are in life, count on the name trusted in insurance for over 80 years. Independence Blue Cross.
The savoring taste of a good bag of beef jerky is so enjoyable at any time of the day, as long as you can find it. Here's what we suggest. Pure Bull Beef Jerky is our answer, and soon it will be yours. Locally produced in the Philadelphia region, this high-quality, healthy protein snack is easy to secure. Go to steersnacks.com, and you'll see hot garlic, tropical heat, Pure Bull dry rub, and our favorite, Huck and Fod. What's that? Huck and Fod. Go now to steersnacks.com.
Welcome to the Wildwoods, the perfect place where you can safely do everything or nothing at all. Catch a wave, take a nap, go for a drive, grab a bite. It's your vacation, and we're doing everything we can to make it a safe one. The Wildwoods. Your vacation, your way.
The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local Union 98, is a proud sponsor of The Labor Show with J. Doc and Krause every Saturday night from 6 till 8 p.m. IBEW Local 98's highly trained and superbly skilled electricians are the best in the business, setting the highest safety standards in the electrical industry. So when you're planning your next industrial, commercial, or residential project, choose an IBEW Local 98 union contractor. Learn more at ibew98.org.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you. Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
This is a key. It's a family tree. It's a pair of wings. It's a secret handshake. And a ticket to anywhere in the world. It's more than a uniform. It's the door to a world most people only dream of. There's Strong, and then there's Army Strong. Try it on at GoArmy.com.
Summer edition of Birds 365 here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. Mac guys, John McMullen, Jody McDonald, putting up our first guest of the day. He came on with us about a month or so ago and gave us a fabulous spot and tremendous insight. Yeah, we're putting the pressure on him. We expect the exact same again today. From Sports Illustrated, our buddy Conor Orr jumps aboard with us. How are you, Conor?
I'm doing good, guys. How are you?
Good, Connor. Good to have you again. I guess the biggest news in the NFL, obviously, is Carl Nassib coming out as the first openly gay player in the NFL. Obviously, years ago, Michael Sam tried to make it, had come out. I covered Ezra Tuaolo back in the day, but he came out after he played in the NFL. Obviously, he's not the first gay player is what I'm trying to say in the NFL. I do want to say this, Connor. We had Amy Trask on a couple weeks ago talking about the Eagles hiring Catherine Raish as the highest ranking female personnel executive. And what she told me is basically it'll be great when this isn't a story and it's just a common occurrence. You see kind of the same thing with Carl.
Yeah, I got a chance to speak with Wade Davis, who played in the NFL in the early 2000s and came out after, and actually was the NFL's consultant throughout the Michael Sam period, talked to a lot of teams about how they should approach stuff like this. And that's exactly what he said is, there's going to come a time when there's not going to need to be an Instagram announcement. There's going to be a time when this isn't trending on Twitter. And he said what was really kind of cool about yesterday was it was news, but it didn't feel earth-shattering, and I think that that's great for Carl. It's great for the community, but it's also time to appreciate the people who, like Michael Sam. This was big news when he did this, right? And Michael Sam was kind of the test run for everybody, right? We got out all of our inappropriate conversations. He took the brunt of it, and now all these other guys that are coming after can have a little bit softer of a landing because of that.
And even though I think we are more understanding and just general community, I'm talking worldwide, not just the narrow focus of any given sport. We're talking about the NBA here, but I think we've made great strides, but it's far from a perfect world in which we're living. Bigger issue for Carl Nassib in his own locker room with short-sighted, biased individuals, or with opponents? Is it more likely he's going to hear about it, be given a hard time, hear stuff said to him while he's playing from an opponent just because he's an opponent? Or do you think the close nature of the locker room that is going to actually still be an area where there's going to be work needed to be done?
I think, it's interesting. I mean, what Wade had said was there's so much work that went in behind the scenes that we didn't see or hear for the last, 10 years. coaches are educated on how to talk about this stuff. Teams are educated on this stuff. I mean, he went locker room by locker room and went through all this stuff. There were guys who were adamantly opposed to having gay teammates that are now appearing at events with him on monthly basis. And he said that, nothing's going to be perfect. There's never going to be a perfect situation. There's always going to be people. But he said that, and I think it's interesting is it's just going to exist as a non-story. I think, if there's somebody that comes out and says something, I think I would be surprised. I think that over the years, I think we've all increased our proximity to somebody in the LGBTQ community. And with, increased closeness comes increased understanding. And I think that we're just in a better spot than we were with Michael Sam and, in even before that.
Conor, it's that dead period in the NFL. And I know this is where NFL coaches kind of get a little bit nervous. And I always go back to Bill Parcells. I always tell people this. When one of his guys, so to speak, would get a head coaching job, he'd give him little nuggets of advice. And one that always stuck with me was there are 4 or 5 things that happen every day in the NFL that you don't want to happen. And if you can't deal with it, go get another job. I don't think Bill was talking about Frank Clark having an Uzi in his car. I don't think he was talking about poor Jalen Twyman, who's a rookie defensive tackle with the Vikings, getting shot 4 times in Washington, D.C. But, man, this is what happens, not just in the NFL, but society as a whole. How difficult is this dead period for coaches when they're concerned about what guys are doing and where they're putting themselves, what type of situations they put themselves in at times?
Well, it's crazy, too, because if you think about it, all these coaches last year almost had a false sense of comfort, right? Because nobody was going anywhere. Nobody was doing anything. And if you're a first-time head coach last year, and I'm thinking about all the guys that got new jobs last year, like Kevin Stefanski, you're almost like, well, this is what a real offseason feels like now. Now I'm on edge. Now I got to worry about where all these guys are, what they're doing, who they're spending time with. But I think it's one of those things where this stuff is inevitable. I mean, it's going to happen, and you just hope that if from a coaching perspective, you hope that culture that you created kind of permeates throughout the off season. And if before a guy leaves the house to do something that he's not supposed to do, he thinks twice about it, and I think some coaches are good and able to do that. But there are some players who are always just going to do what they're going to do. And that leads to a lot of anxiousness at this time of year.
On that difficult balanced plate that the coach needs to spin all year long, 365, and yes, might be even harder when the players are not around because all you do is worry about it. There's a lot that every NFL coach has on their plate. This year, adding to it above and beyond play calling and keeping the team moving forward and everything else is the vaccine because it has become a big issue. The NFL has put certain rules and regulations in place that if you have X amount of players vaccinated, that you don't have to follow certain rules as compared to those who choose not to be vaccinated, who do have to still stay within the protocols. Some players like Cole Beasley are getting really outspoken about it. His latest quote, I got to be honest with you, I surely don't agree with, and I'm not sure I even understand that he said, I'd rather die than not live. So not getting vaccinated to him is considered living. Okay, Cole, if you say so. I don't get that, but that's fine. It has become a little divisive with certain players. Is that going to be an issue in locker rooms? Are those who have gotten vaccinated going to have an issue with the guys who are not, so that they have to treat their teammates differently and the coaches have to handle the overall team differently and the like? I think it's got to be a personal choice thing. But some people are taking it a little harshly, at least in my estimation, as to how the league is handled and the like. How big a deal is this going to be when camp reopens for all the teams across the National Football League?
I think that it's going to be a huge deal. I mean, you're seeing in Carolina that the starting quarterback, isn't getting vaccinated. And if the starting quarterback is, undergoing different rules and restrictions, and he's supposed to be the guy that's allowed to have hands on everybody and everything in the facility. And so, that's going to complicate matters. And, I think that we always go back to this idea that locker room is a microcosm of society, and vaccine is a hot debate in our society right now. So it's going to be a hot debate in locker rooms. I imagine that guys are going to have real conversations about this, and that it's going to get heated at some point. But I just keep going back to what's the right answer, who's doing the right thing, and I'm thinking about Ron Rivera, who had a scientist come in, talk to his team, and not only a scientist but a black scientist, right? Because there's hesitancy in black communities about vaccines specifically. And so, trying to meet these guys at a common ground, trying to explain the benefits of it. And from there, you just hope that it goes well. I mean, we're not seeing a ton of teams, hit that max threshold, right? And so that means that there's a lot more Cole Beasleys out there who just kind of aren't as outspoken as Cole Beasley. So is this going to get complicated? I think there's no doubt. And I'm really interested to see where it goes from here.
There's Connor, there's a difference between, say, Bruce Arians, who's got all this cachet as a Super Bowl winning coach, Tom Brady, veteran guy, everybody loves him, got this folksy kind of wisdom. He goes out there and says, you want to get back to normal, get vaccinated. And I can't prove it, but I bet you at the end of the day, the Bucs aren't going to have an issue with this. Most of the guys, they're going to hit the 85% threshold. Can't say it, but I'm going to predict it. Rookie head coach, we have one in Philadelphia, Nick Sirianni. He doesn't have that cachet. How much more difficult do you think it is for younger coaches, first-time coaches, rookie coaches versus somebody with the gravitas of a Bruce Arians?
It's extremely difficult, and that's why I think you're seeing even guys like Ron Rivera, who have been to a Super Bowl, lean on somebody else to do that talking, right? And to take the lead on that in your locker room, because it's a dicey situation. And if you're a coach, you have to decide, is this the place that I want to put my foot down for the first time and basically divide a locker room? And do I have the ears to be able to get them back if I need it? And that's going to be a really delicate balance to strike, especially for someone like Sirianni. You're coming into a situation a little late. There's still a lot of veteran leadership in that locker room, especially on the offensive line, guys that you can't lose. You can't afford to lose. And so, if you're him, you really have to do what some of these coaches have done in the past, which is almost reverse engineer it, which is get the players that you need to get on your side and then work through them. And I think that would be my advice. I'm sure other coaches would tell them the same thing, because you make a great point. If you're not Bruce Arians, if you're not Bill Belichick, you don't get to just come out there and say, hey, come on, guys, let's do this and let's quit jerking around. It doesn't sound the same coming out of Nick Sirianni's mouth, unfortunately.
John predicted that the Bucs will get up to 85% because of Bruce Arians' strong stance. I'll take the Steelers. And Mike Tomlin has done the same thing. And I think he's the kind of guy who can stand up in a room and say, listen, guys, we really need to do this. If you got it, any of you have a problem, let's come talk in my office. But the rest of you guys sitting on the fence, just do that. We need it for the Steelers, and it'll get done. We were talking earlier, John and myself, about a comparison between Carson Wentz and Ben Simmons we're dealing with here in Philadelphia. We know Carson Wentz is no longer here. He kind of talked his way out of town, made it very well known without coming out and directly saying it to the media that he didn't want to be here. The Eagles made the decision that they were moving on from him, even though it meant a huge dead money cap hit this year. They got a decent return, not as high as some people thought that he should get back, but he was one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. To come away with what they did wasn't terrible. But the point I'm trying to get to and ask you is, he talked his way out of town. Aaron Rodgers is trying to talk his way out of town. The Packers are playing it the way they're playing it. The Eagles kept pretty closed-mouthed about it with the public, but behind closed doors, they were trying to find a suitor for Carson Wentz, ended up shipping him to Indianapolis. When is the pressure point? When does it get to either the Packers or Rodgers? Is it the first day of camp when he doesn't show up? When does the you-know-what hit the fan with the Aaron Rodgers-Green Bay Packer relationship?
I think it's a couple days into camp. I think then that's when everybody starts to get nervous. And, and freak out a little bit. But it's interesting because I just think that both of these sides are hurting themselves. It's not like there's one side that's obviously winning this tug of war. If I think about Aaron Rodgers, I mean, of course I want to be there, but you have to convince the Packers that you're willing to sit out probably one of the 2 final seasons of your athletic prime. And that's it. You don't get that back. That never comes back. And so I don't think he's doing a great job of, really making them think that he's not going to be there when push comes to shove. And on the other side, you have a guy like Jordan Love who has had some bad days of practice, but you have to consider what the offensive system that the Packers have installed does for quarterbacks like Jordan Love. Like, they can win 10 games with Jordan Love in that system. They won 10 games with Jimmy Garoppolo in that system. They won, a lot of teams that run that outside zone offense, you're winning 10, 11 games with Ryan Tannehill in Tennessee with Derrick Henry. I think you can win 9 or 10 games with Jordan Love in that system. And I'm not saying that it's perfect. I'm just saying a lot of smart coaches and a lot of good teams are running it. And I think that he could pick it up. But I think Aaron Rodgers is obviously better, right? He transcends the system. He brings you from a team that could maybe scratch and claw for a wild card berth to the Super Bowl. It's obvious his talent there, but I think if you're Green Bay, you have to play your cards like you've been playing them now. I mean, at this point, what are you going to do? He wants you to fire the general manager. You're going to fire your general manager? That's a horrible precedent to set. And I think then you're just setting yourself up to get knocked around for the rest of the time that he feels like being there. And so I think that's a dangerous situation too. So it's going to be interesting, but I would say probably 2 or 3 days into camp before everybody starts looking around and saying, okay, maybe he's really not coming back.
To kind of further the Rodgers discussion, Connor, you mentioned, I'm a little surprised you said Green Bay could win 10 games with Jordan Love. Let's say he does leave. I think the most obvious landing spot would be Denver. How does that shake up the landscape of the NFL? You see everything Minnesota's getting back on the defensive side of the football. Maybe it spikes them a little bit up in the NFC North. And is Denver, do they become a legitimate Super Bowl contender? Does Aaron Rodgers make that kind of difference on both ends of the spectrum? Are the Vikings the favorites? Are Broncos in the conversation? How big of a shift would it be?
I think it would be seismic in the AFC. I think you would make Denver a prohibitive Super Bowl favorite. I love that roster. I love that. Yeah. They are loaded on defense this year, and you have the best defensive coordinator in the league. Those are 2 good things to have. And I think they did a nice job at addressing some of the needs on offense. They got an interior offensive lineman in the draft who can play right away. They got a great running back. And so I think that team is ready. Now, Aaron Rodgers, it takes him some time, right, to acclimate to a system. It takes him time to acclimate to receivers. That's why we don't see a lot of rotation at that position in Green Bay, because he needs guys to do what he wants them to do. So would that be an interesting component of the offseason? Yeah. But I think Denver easily becomes a prohibitive Super Bowl favorite there. Now, in the North, in the NFC, I still really like Green Bay. I mean, I think that this is a good roster. I think that the way that things are run, of course, you do things a little bit differently because you can't depend on Aaron Rodgers to get things done. But if you have coaches who coach that outside zone scheme well, if you have a running back who can run that system well, everything looks the same. It's still difficult for defenses to stop. I would probably still roll the dice and take my chances with the Packers there.
While you were talking, I got a text from a buddy of mine named A. Reed, who said, does Connor realize that the Kansas City Chiefs have been to 2 consecutive Super Bowls, and he's making the Denver Broncos the prohibitive favorite in the AFC? I think I know who it was, but I got to double check. I'll get back to that one. All right, Connor, let me ask you about another big story that's broken in the last 24, 48 hours. We've been leading up to it for months, if not years, but major court decision came down that college athletes are going to be able to make money. Amateur status is going by the boards in college sports, and it's about time. Through their own likeness, ability to sell autographs, not going to go into every way that they can, but it may very well include more direct payments from universities and the like. The amateurism of college sports is going by the wayside, and I think rightfully so. how big an impact is that going to have one step removed from the NFL? Well, of course, we got to deal with it first on a collegiate level, but this is an NFL show. You're an NFL writer. How is college athletes getting paid going to affect their transference into the National Football League?
So I was thinking about this the other day, and I think what struck me is we're already at a point where the draft and a lot of this stuff, college football has become so homogenized where you're basically just throwing a bunch of guys from the SEC in a pool and you're picking them in the first round. I mean, that's basically what you're doing. And that's going to increase twofold, right? Because all the schools that can afford to pay these guys are going to get the best players, and you're going to see everybody migrate there. And so, then your development at the next level to the NFL depends on your success in one of these 4 or 5 systems. And so if all these guys are running 4 or 5 offenses, then the offensive coordinators in the NFL have to run those offenses. Then the coaches in the NFL have to coach those offenses. The GMs have to, and it'll have an effect like that, where I think that the nice part about the amateurism was the fact that there was talent that was spread out so far and wide, and it led to a kind of a broader exchange of ideas. It led to, teams saying, well, we drafted this guy from Toledo and look at the offense that they run, and here's all the cool things we could do from there, and blah, blah, blah. But I think that you're going to see less of that if basically there's going to be 4 or 5 football prep academies in college, and you're basically going to have to pick the guys out of them. I mean, I think that's going to be the dangerous part here.
That's why Conor's great, man. There's always unintended consequences, but that's a Pandora's box that even I didn't think of. So well done, Conor Orr. I do think people don't, it's all been linear and they don't think about those unintended consequences. It is going to have a big impact on the NFL, but more important than any SCOTUS decision, Tim Tebow did not get invited to Tight End University. He did not get invited to Tight End University, which is taking place in Nashville this week. George Kittle, Greg Olson put it together. Tongue planted firmly in cheek. But I do want to talk about this cottage industry. We had Colin Thompson on, who's a tight end for the Panthers right now. Because of the way the NFL offseason is set up, you have all these personal coaches, quarterback coaches, footwork coaches, pass rushing specialists, everything. Offensive line, Lane Johnson does masterminds, tight end view now. The coaches worry about that kind of stuff. In other words, they have them in their building and they're teaching them a certain way. And then they go somewhere else to work with who knows who, and maybe they're teaching some habits they don't want to be taught, for lack of a better phraseology.
The short answer is yes. They, and that speaks to both the ego of the coaches and our natural instinct to question everything that we're told, right? And so there's a yin and a yang there, and then in the middle is probably best practice somewhere. And so I think what's interesting is there are mechanisms in place that coaches have and NFL trainers have to be able to kind of tell what these guys have been doing in the off season. There's biomarker tests and all these health things. So when a player comes back into the facility, they can have them hop on all these machines and say, okay, I asked you to work on this. I asked you to work on this. It's clear that you haven't been doing that. Your legs aren't strong enough. Your arms aren't strong enough. This is where we have to go from here. But it's interesting. I mean, some of these schemes are so finite down to these granular details where you want a running back to hit a target that's the back heel of a tight end on a running play. And if he's working out with a private coach who says, no, you're going to do better if you cut up this way and do that. Yeah. I mean, you're going to have, a bunch of time explaining something to somebody during camp that you didn't expect to be wasting. And so I think that it's tough, but at the same time, if you're a coach, if you're a GM, these guys do help these players come into the season feeling better prepared. And that's really the most important thing is do these guys show up excited, ready to play and believing in themselves? And the rest of it, you can really kind of get around one way or another. So I think that, they're worried about it. They're concerned about it. They keep their eye on it. But at the end of the day, I think, they realize that there's not a whole lot they can do about it.
Bummed to hear Tebow did not get the invite to the tight end gathering. That's just wrong.
He'll show him. He's going to show everybody.
And I need to know where next week the long snapper convention is going to be, because I need to do some research on that. Wanted to go here. I think, Connor, we had you on afterwards, but I don't know if I asked you about it. The NFL is going to have its biggest season ever, which I pimp both ESPN and the NFL Network, because they've announced it's the biggest season ever, purely because they're playing 17 games. So I guess technically they are correct. It is the biggest season ever. I would personally wait till after a season's played to decide it's the biggest season ever, but they're doing it in advance. We're going to play a 17th game this year. It's adding about 7% more workload than players have been asked to handle before. How is that practically going to play out on the field? Is there going to be any difference than we can see, other than the season goes 1 week longer and everybody's going to make more money because the TV contracts go up? But in practicality on the field, are we going to be able to put a judgment on the quality of the product because it's an extra game? Will coaches coach differently? Will rosters be managed differently because we're playing 17 rather than 16?
Not right away, but I bet that the coach who figures that out first is going to do really well, and then everybody's going to run out ahead and copy him, right? It's like, who are the first NBA coaches that really got heavy into load management with their star players and didn't really care that people
Greg
were...
Popovich.
That would be Greg Popovich. Yes,
Yeah.
he was the grandfather of load management.
Yeah, and I don't care if you're paying to go see Tim Duncan. We're not going to play Tim Duncan, And I think that if, maybe it exists, 5 or 10 years down the road where Andy Reid says, I don't care if you're showing up here to see Patrick Mahomes, it's week 16 and we're 10-3, whatever. And, I don't need him right now, and he's not going to play the rest of the season. And, that's that. And I think that that's probably the Pandora's box that the NFL is afraid to open up. But the nice thing about it is I don't think that it probably affects too many people, right? Like, and if it did, you wouldn't care, right? Because you'd want to load manage your running backs, your offensive linemen, the guys that are, in the more physical positions, and fans aren't going to freak out if they can't see Eric Fisher, on Sunday. I think they'll be okay about that. But I do think that at some point load management is going to become a big concern. I think that at some point, if I'm the players, I probably fight to get a second bye week in there. You probably want a second bye week included in the next CBA whenever you do that. But until then, it'll be interesting. I mean, I don't think the product is going to dilute. Week 17 or whatever it'll be, week 19. There's still going to be something to watch. I think everybody's saying, "Oh, this is going to be horrible, and it's going to be all these terrible games, and nobody's going to want to play." The NFL will find a way to make week 19 watchable. They find a way to make everything watchable. And so there will be something to watch in week 19.
Connor, last one from me, because you just sparked something in me, and that was the NFL's attempt to get away from Toradol, talking about opioids, and obviously having more open-minded policies on cannabis as a potential pain reliever. But you brought up load management. Look, I don't care what anyone does. They can have as much, smoke as much as they want, edibles. That's not going to help you get on the field. And I go back to Lane Johnson, who took, I think it was 2 or 3 shots of Toradol to get through a game. When you talk about load management, if you're not letting guys take Toradol anymore, does that just play in the load management? Because they're not going to be able to play. I mean, they're just not going to be able to play if they smoke a joint or not. You can't get through the game.
Yeah. Well, I think that, the difficult part here is that the NFL, I remember people asking Roger Goodell about this 10 years ago, about load management, pain management, Toradol, opioid use. I mean, you're seeing what these guys are doing after they're done playing, and it's not okay. What they need to ingest to get through a day, never mind a football game. And so I think that there needs to be a more holistic kind of whole body approach. And there are players who have people in their corners who are helping them. Like, our writer Greg Bishop did a story on Andrew Whitworth where he's eliminated every kind of pain management. He doesn't even take Advil, and he says that my body will eventually get used to this if I keep playing through it. And, while that might not work for everybody, I think that there needs to be those kind of ideas where, these players need to be treated as individual humans. What makes you depend on this? What makes you need this? And all that kind of stuff. And so I think that there needs to be an entire sea change shift in the NFL and how we approach player health, player management. But it's going to be interesting. I mean, I think that, Toradol will still be handed out in locker rooms. I don't think it's going to go away. But I think that the NFL realizes its culpability in this and is trying to, at the last minute, like always, try to do this hard shift when you can't. This is a long-term problem that they have to solve. And I think it's going to take a while. It's going to take some time to figure this out.
Last one for me, Connor. And again, thanks much for hopping on with us. This round in the NBA playoffs wasn't nearly as bad with fan behavior as the opening round of the playoffs. Yeah, somebody threw a plastic water bottle on the Sixers court the other night when they got eliminated by the Hawks. Philly had 2 incidents. Thank you very much. But they had spitting in New York and ridiculously bad treatment of fans from the other team in Utah. Getting back into full arenas, we knew there was going to be some issues. Just people had gotten out of the normal behavior, weren't used to it, got to get back into the accepted behaviors and norms of fan behavior. I've always thought of football fans as the rowdiest of all fans. They're the only ones with guys with no shirts on and complete body painting and the like. They're football fans. How big a deal is that going to be this year that we're playing at capacity stadiums again in the National Football League? Is it going to be something that it's going to take a month? It's going to take all season? Is it going to be an issue at all? Do you think that's something the NFL has to be very wary of when they open up this season in full capacity situations again?
I would say I'm less worried about the NFL in terms of interactions with players because the proximity is such that if you're seated really close to the players, you're smart enough not to be a knucklehead because a person who's going to walk in there and be a knucklehead is not going to be able to afford seats that are close enough to the players anyway. But I would say that what I'm worried about is I'm in New Jersey, and so I'm at MetLife Stadium a lot, and you walk by the state police barracks down there and there's always something going on. I mean, it's not like there's ever an incident-free game. What's going to happen when we kind of start to plop people together with a tailgate time worth full alcohol and it's still a little bit turbulent? I mean, look at all the societal issues that we've talked about in the last 15 minutes of this show. I mean, it's all very real still, and it's all still going on, and people are still upset about it. But now we're all in the same, concrete bowl together, and we've had a few drinks. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see how we behave with one another in NFL stadiums, just because unlike the NBA, I feel like it's too hard to get on top of players in the NFL. I mean, unless somebody tries something crazy during a Lambeau leap or something like that, there's really kind of a little bit more of a buffer zone for players in the NFL.
Connor, great stuff. We appreciated you coming on before. We appreciated you today. Oh, guess what? We're going to tap into you again down the road. So be on the lookout for my text. Thanks much for joining us, Connor. Appreciate it.
I saw Les Bowen was on. Can somebody please tell him I said congratulations on a wonderful career and looked up to him for many, many years, and appreciate all that he did for the business. So thank you, Les.
We will do that for you when we get Les up. Rest assured. Thanks. Conor Orr from Sports Illustrated here with us on Birds 365. All right, Jody Mac, Danny Mac here with you on Birds 365. When we come back, I want to give an acknowledge to other Philadelphia football writers. We got McMullen, we got the retiring Bowen. Give a little props to Brendan Lee Gouton and Philly Voice's own Jimmy Kempski, who came up with 30 over-unders on their Bleeding Green Nation podcast, which I read yesterday, and I found some of them very interesting. I told Johnny Mac I wanted to run some of them by him today. We'll do that when we come back next here on Birds 365.
I get scared sometimes.
Of a lot of things.
Joining in.
Decisions.
The dark.
The dark.
But I once heard someone say,
But as I always say,
it's okay to be afraid.
As long as you face the fear.
And keep moving forward.
Wherever you are in life, count on the name trusted in insurance for over 80 years. Independence Blue Cross.
The savory taste of a good bag of beef jerky is so enjoyable at any time of the day, as long as you can find it. Here's what we suggest. Pure Bull Beef Jerky is our answer, and soon it will be yours. Locally produced in the Philadelphia region, this high-quality, healthy protein snack is easy to secure. Go to steersnacks.com, and you'll see hot garlic, tropical heat, Pure Bull dry rub, and our favorite, Huck and Fod. What's that? Huck and Fod. Go now to steersnacks.com.
Welcome to the Wildwoods, the perfect place where you can safely do everything or nothing at all. Catch a wave, take a nap, go for a drive, grab a bite. It's your vacation, and we're doing everything we can to make it a safe one. The Wildwoods. Your vacation, your way.
The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local Union 98, is a proud sponsor of The Labor Show with J. Doc and Krause every Saturday night from 6 to 8 p.m. IBEW Local 98's highly trained and superbly skilled electricians are the best in the business, setting the highest safety standards in the electrical industry. So when you're planning your next industrial, commercial, or residential project, choose an IBEW Local 98 union contractor. Learn more at ibew98.org.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on three. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
This is a key. It's a family tree. It's a pair of wings. It's a secret handshake. And a ticket to anywhere in the world. It's more than a uniform. It's the door to a world most people only dream of. There's Strong, and then there's Army Strong. Try it on at GoArmy.com.
Tuesday edition of Birds 365 with the Mac and Mac guys here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. Coming up in about 20 some odd minutes. Les Bowen is scheduled to join us. The announcement just came down this week that Les is packing up his pen. Will not be covering the Birds for the daily news. Took his buyout from them. He will be tremendously missed. I think he's done a great job covering Eagles Low these many years. We'll talk to Les about that coming up in less than 20 minutes. But before we get there, did see this yesterday in a couple of places, certainly on Bleeding Green Nation, because of the Bleeding Green Nation podcast that our buddy Brendan Lee Gouton and Jimmy Kempski from Philly Voice got together and ran down 30 over-unders. And I think most of you understand what over-unders is, right? Betting wagers, specifically decided by statistics, compiled numbers and the like. And man, I had a fun time doing this. As a matter of fact, as we were going through it, I was voting. And I got to give the nod to the Eagle fans out there. Either I'm just a fool or I am on the same wavelength with the Eagle fans. But almost every time that I voted, I ended up on the side that was getting the higher percentage of the vote. Because it's one of those things you do on the website, you vote, and they tell you what the percentage breakout is. I was on the same side with Eagle fans on most of these. Therefore, I have to believe that all Eagle fans are smart, because they think like me. But I just had a tremendous time doing it. Johnny Mac, I want to run these by you and see which way you lean for a whole bunch of Eagle over-unders. Jalen Hurts quarterback rating for this upcoming season. Over-under 87.5.
Oof. Better be over. That's very middling in these days. Doesn't sound bad, but 87.5 is pretty bad. I'm going to go over. I have more confidence in Jalen Hurts.
You know, I do too. So I'm certainly going over. But I will give him this. I think 87.5 was right around where they had set it. Maybe 88, maybe 89. It should have been below 90. because he is a basically second-year quarterback, borderline rookie quarterback, because he only started 4 games last year. I thought they set a fair number on it, most on the over, which means Eagle fans are optimistic. That's a good thing. Here's one I didn't quite get. Hurts's fumbles, 14.5.
Oh,
I know he fumbled the ball last year, but again, thrown into the deep end of the pool, didn't know he was going to be the starting quarterback. He's got all year to prep to be the starting quarterback this year. And just my own personal belief, John, and you and I have never talked about this. If a quarterback fumbles and he recovers it himself, to me, that should only count as a half a fumble. If you don't lose the ball, yes, you lose the possibility to throw it downfield to make a first down, so you need to demark it in some way. But if you recover it, well, then that's not that big a deal. So I would only count that as a half a fumble. But in the way that they're
they do fumbles and fumbles lost, so they pack that in, and then defensively you have forced fumbles and fumble recoveries, so they kind of factor that in.
Understood, and they're not differentiating in this stat. It's just total fumbles 14.5. Jalen Hurts, you going under or over?
Oh, I'm going way under. Come on, 14.5. I hope Pamela Hurts is listening to this, because I think more of Jalen Hurts than most people around this league do. Because I'm not criticizing Jimmy and Brandon. These are numbers that people are saying. 14.5, no way he's fumbling the football 14.5 times. No.
And I say the same thing. And again, when I voted yesterday, it was, what was the under? Oh, under percentage, 75-25 on the under. So we're not alone. Eagle fans think with us. But the only guy who's a bigger Jalen Hurts fan than you is me for Mrs. Hurts. Thank you very much. Joe Flacco starts 1.5 this upcoming season. Jalen Hurts can get hurt.
Yeah, that's a good number. Yeah, I do think we just talked about load management. 17 games with Conor Orr. 1.5 games. That's not a lot in the modern NFL to miss 2 games. I'm going to go over on that. Maybe a sprained ankle, maybe something of that nature. I don't think he's going to get pulled for lack of performance, because I think the Eagles are intent on finding out what they have. But I think he's going to miss a couple games. I'm going to go over.
Here's how I would hedge. And I like hedging. I think if you hedge in life, you can be much happier. So many people in this world today need to get to the polar opposite ends of every single stance that they take. I like a comfortable gray area in the middle. Here's what I'll say about Flacco. I think he'll play in more than 1.5 games. But I don't think he'll start more than 1.5 games. I think Jalen could get hurt in games and have to miss action, and Flacco might have to go in a couple plays, maybe a quarter, maybe a whole half, but I don't know that it'll be the overall start. So I go under on that one. Deshaun Watson snaps in an Eagle uniform this year, 0.05. In other words, will he be a Philadelphia Eagle? Of course, if he's an Eagle, it's going to be way over a half a snap. Or he's not going to be an Eagle. He's not going anywhere. Will Deshaun Watson be an Eagle this year? Basically, yes or no is the question.
Yeah, I don't think he will, so I'm going the under. I just don't think it's going to be clarified enough, his situation, for the Eagles to make that move. But yeah, I've said it since the beginning. If they clarify it, and even if that means a significant suspension, 6-8 games, then I think everything's on the table. But I don't think it's going to get clarified, so I'm going under.
See, again, give credit to the Eagle fans. 94% under. They're saying the same exact thing you just said. Would like to see it, maybe, but yeah, not happening. Devonta Smith's yardage this year, 912 yards. What's the stat, J-Mac? You would know this better than me. Eagles had no wide receivers that
600 yards. 600 yards in 2 consecutive seasons.
2 straight seasons, no wide receiver, 600 yards. So let's set the bar for Devonta at 900 and change, which seems kind of unfair. If they couldn't have one receiver in 2 years get to 600, why would you expect this guy to get 912?
Because he can actually play the position, and it's easy to get 900 yards in the modern NFL. Plus, we're going an extra game. So I'm going over. And that extra game helps. Look, I said he's not getting 1,400 yards like Justin Jefferson did because the Eagles are not built that way to throw the football that much. But he's getting over 912 if he's healthy, and you got to assume he's healthy.
Right. That's part of the assumption you got to make. I'll assume health, and I'll say over 912 as well. Devonta touchdowns, 4.5. Over.
I'm going over. I think he's going to be the centerpiece of their passing game. So he's going to get a lot of traffic. He's going to get a lot of targets, and he's going to get a lot of opportunities. So even if it's a disappointing season, I think he's going to have 1,000 yards and 7 or so touchdowns.
Yeah. Speaking of comps, Greg Ward, maybe you've heard of him, had 6 touchdowns last year. So do I think Devonta Smith can do what Greg Ward did last year? Yes, I do. So I'm taking over 4.5. By the way, 94% say over on that one. Miles Sanders, rushing yards, 1,023.5. Under or over?
I'm going over for the same reason, extra game. Even if Miles misses a couple games, which I expect him to, if you do the math, you get to 60 yards, you're going to be way over that number. Got to stay healthy. Yeah, I think he's going to be over. And I think the Eagles are going to be a more run-based team. Now, I never say run first but there's going to be balance because there has to be balance. So I think he's going to go over.
I was surprised. Right now, the vote is actually under 59% under 1,023. I'm with you. Extra game. Don't know about the new system. Yes, we know Jeff Lurie will probably be whispering in Nick Sirianni's ear, throw the ball. Throw the ball. We don't throw the ball enough. Still, that being said, I'm going to go over with you. You and I are on the exact same page there. Dallas Goedert receiving yards, 809.5. Over, under.
I'm going over. He's going to be the tight end 1, and he's going to be Jalen Hurts' security blanket. I mean, young quarterback, 6'6" target in the middle of the field. He's going to default to him a lot. So I think he's going over that number.
Yeah, this is one that I'm not as optimistic. I'm going under. 62% are leaning on the under too. Again, I was surprised how many times I was in lockstep with the majority of what the people were suggesting. All right, more receiving yards this year. Jalen Reagor or Travis Fulgham? Which way you going?
Oof, that's a good one. Better be Jalen Reagor. I'm going to go Jalen Reagor because they're going to give him every opportunity to get more than Travis Fulgham or Greg Ward or anybody else. So just from that, I'm going to lean on Jalen Reagor. Hopefully, he doesn't fall on his face.
This was one of those that I actually went against the grain, and I took Travis Fulgham. Eagle fans are certainly leaning into the 2-1 in Jalen Reagor's direction, but even more so than that, 78-22. So more, almost over 3-1. I was I was impressed by Travis Fulgham last year, and I think he can keep it up. So I'll go against you and Eagle Nation on that one. Who gets more total offensive touches this year? Boston Scott or Kenny Gainwell?
Boston Scott. Kenny Gainwell's not going to be ready to play. I think he's going to be a manufactured player. I think he's going to be that type of player, gets maybe 2 or 3 touches a game. They're going to split him out wide when they have 4 wides or 5 wides and try to use him that way. I think he's sort of a developmental type of project. So I think they're going to default a little bit more to Boston Scott and Kerryon Johnson if he's healthy for that matter.
This one was easy for me. Kenny Gainwell, and there'll be a very simple reason for it. I don't think Boston Scott's going to make the team.
That's fair.
So he can't get more touch. If one of the two of them makes it, the other doesn't, that's pretty much a layover.
I think he's on the bubble as well, but I don't think they're keeping Jordan Howard over Boston Scott. So
no, I think it's going to be Kerryon Johnson. You think they're going to keep 4 running backs?
I think they're going to keep 4.
Okay. Well, then we'll probably make the team. I think they may keep more wide receivers than most people think because Jeff Lurie is going to say, pass the ball. But that's, again, we're getting off the track. Total number of rookies that make the team, 8.5. Now, this is the 53-man roster, not the active on game day roster, but on the roster, not counting practice squad. Rookies, 8.5.
Let's see. 2021 Eagles draft. Who's going to make the team? I think everybody's going to make the team except potentially Patrick Johnson. So how many is that?
Eagles had 9 draft picks.
Yeah, that's 8. So then you always want. We talked about Conor Orr with ego with NFL coaches. They always want to keep one undrafted guy. Always. I'm going to go over for that reason.
Okay. I'll say under, but I know I'm probably swimming upstream. Only 47% said over. Actually, I got the majority on my side on the under too. But I readily acknowledge that's going to be tough because yes, you always want to keep your drafted players. All right, and Landon Dickerson starts 6.5 over or under.
Under.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know if he's going to be healthy for week 1. That plays into it. Remember, he tore his ACL late. So it's a big guy. I think they want to be cautious, number 1. So that plays into it. And then, Isaac Seumalo and Brandon Brooks and Jason Kelsey are going to play if they're healthy. So I got to assume they're going to be healthy. Maybe that's pie in the sky with Brandon, but we'll see. They're healthy. They're going to be out there.
I think it's one of the easier ones. I think it's absolutely an under. Number 1, we don't know when he's going to be able to play. And number 2, we don't know if he's going to be needed. So I would absolutely go under on this one. Here's one where I think you'll go. I know where you'll go. Andre Dillard starts this year with either the Eagles or someone else.
Wow.
3.5. You going over or under?
Over. I think he's going to be the starting left tackle of this team. And I know I'm in the minority, but I just been around this league too long, man. They're going to default to the first round pick, even if Howie Roseman forces them to.
Yeah, you and I are in agreement on that one. You're well on the record that both of us are on the record that we're leaning toward him actually winning the starting job. Sorry to our boy, Mr. Mailata. Derek Barnett sacks, 6.5, over under.
Ooh, that's a good one. If he's healthy, but he's never healthy, I'm going over. I'm going to go over. Contract year, a lot of incentives for Derek Barnett to play well. And I think he's a good player. Most of the issues have been health. He's been banged up. I don't know if he can stay healthy. But that contract year, I think, is going to spark him. I think he's going over.
Yeah, the people think over. It's 54% as well. I think under. I'm sorry, I'm not a Derek Barnett fan. I think Ryan Kerrigan gets more than 6.5 sacks. I don't think Derek Barnett does. All right, Darius Slay interceptions, 2, over or under?
Under. Who's going to throw at him, Joe?
Yeah, that's the problem.
Who's going to throw at him? It's a small number, so I think it's a good placement because you have to throw it sometimes. And Darius is coming off a year where he didn't produce. Traditionally, he gets a lot of interceptions, but I wouldn't even look his way. So I got to go under.
All right. The CB2 across from Darius Slay is currently on the roster or not on the roster?
Not on the roster.
Not on the roster is at 53% as compared to 47. I'm actually surprised that it's 53-47. I thought it'd be more like
much closer than
2/3, 1/3, as a matter of fact. How many Eagles make the initial Pro Bowl roster? That's before guys start begging off because of injury, blah, 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 and you get the replacements. There are years where the replacements are just as plentiful as the original players that are named to the squad. So just initial Pro Bowlers, Over under 2.5. You'd think Fletcher Cox is one of them. You coming up with another two guys?
Yeah, I'm going over. I'm going over for reputation because this team has enough guys with reputations. Fletcher, remember Brandon Graham broke through as well. He's a veteran. We have Kelsey on the offensive line, Brooks Johnson, if they're healthy. People are going to default to those names. I'm not even going to say all of them are going to deserve it, but I'm going to go over.
All right, this one I actually think they put a lot of thought into, and it just made me laugh out loud. Combined snaps this year for the Philadelphia Eagles: Jordan Matthews, Jalen Mills, Cameron Johnson, Rudy Ford, Vinny Curry, Duke Riley, Nate Gary, Nate Sudfeld, Jason Peters, Nickel Roby Coleman, Trayvon LeBlanc, Corey Clement, Josh Perkins. You get them all, and you only get one snap. All you need is one snap. It's 0.5. Will one of those guys be coming back to Eagle Green at some time during the 2021 season?
Yes. We know Howie Roseman's history. Somebody's going to get hurt, and he's going to go, oh, what's the first number in the bone? I'm going to go over. Somebody, and I can't tell you who because I would tell you individually, no, that person's not going to be back. But somebody will be back at some point.
All right, so my follow-up question just specifically to you, McMullen, has to be Jordan Matthews, Jalen Mills, Cameron Johnson, Rudy Ford, Vinny Curry, Duke Riley, Nate Gary, Nate Sudfeld, Jason Peters, Nickel Roby Coleman, Trayvon LeBlanc, Corey Clement, Josh Perkins. Which is most likely?
Well, yeah, I would say none right now. But
right, no, you got to pick one. I'm holding your feet to fire, buddy. You got to come up with, you got to choose one of those 13, 14 names I just threw at you.
I would pick Duke Riley for this reason. He might get cut, so you got to get cut. And Jalen Mills, he ain't getting cut. Cam Johnson ain't getting cut for just the money they spend on those positions. I go Duke Riley because he might be cut, and the Eagles might need help on special teams, so they might bring him back and say that way.
See, that's why John McMullen's on this time. Not only is it a smart answer, it's a well-thought-out answer with reasoning behind it. So don't be surprised. Those of you who bought your Duke Riley jerseys, you may be able to get it back out of the closet this year. Don't burn it just yet. All right, another one of my favorite ones. Rock, paper, scissors celebration. Will someone come up with a celebration using rock, paper, and scissors this year?
Yeah, it'll be one of the receivers or one of the corners if they ever get an interception. Yeah. Somebody's doing rock, paper, scissors. And somebody from an opposing team might troll the Eagles.
They did not.
Rock, paper,
they
scissors.
did not verify it. It had to be just Eagles. It could be an opposing team. Very good point again, McMullen. All right, this I liked. Dolphins first-round draft position, 16.5. They own the Dolphins pick this year. 32 team. You think it's under?
Yeah, I'm not a Tua fan. I don't think he's the same guy since the injury. I think they're going to have a difficult season. I think it's going to be a positive for the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm going under 16.5.
See, I'm going over. I am a Tua fan, and I think the Dolphins are going to be better than that. The Indianapolis Colts first-round position draft, 21.5. Over under.
That's a good number because that's where they'll be, right in that. I'm going to go slightly under. They're going to have the 20th pick.
I'm going to go under, and I'm going to say the Colt pick will come up before the Dolphin pick. I actually think the Dolphins will have a better season than the Colts. All right, Eagles draft position. Where will they select their own player? 9.5.
Under. Under.
He does so with pain on his face, Eagle fans. He's taking it harsh for you by saying under.
No, actually, I got to be consistent. I'm changing. I said 8 wins. 8 wins not going to get.
You and I both.
I got to go over. It's going to be 11, 12. They're somewhere in that range.
Fair enough. All right, and I just added a couple of my own, if you would allow me. Greg Ward receiving yards, 419. Over under.
Over.
Over, yes. Greg Ward total receptions, 53. Over or under?
Under.
Over. Greg Ward touchdown, 6.
Under.
Over. And yards per catch, Greg Ward, 7.9.
I'm going over. He's going
over.
to have
Yeah,
more of
all
an
right.
impact.
You came
Yeah.
over to my side for 2 out of the 4. I can't complain. The president of Greg Ward Fan Club, of course, says over on all of those over and unders. All right, quickie timeout coming up, and then we're going to be lucky enough to be joined by Les Bowen, retiring beat writer for the Eagles, joining us next here on Birds 365.
I get scared sometimes.
Of a lot of things.
Joining in.
Decisions.
The dark.
The dark.
But I once heard someone say,
But as I always say,
it's okay to be afraid.
as long as you face the fear.
And keep moving forward.
Wherever you are in life, count on the name trusted in insurance for over 80 years. Independence Blue Cross.
The savoring taste of a good bag of beef jerky is so enjoyable at any time of the day, as long as you can find it. Here's what we suggest. Pure Bull Beef Jerky is our answer, and soon it will be yours. Locally produced in the Philadelphia region, this high-quality, healthy protein snack is easy to secure. Go to steersnacks.com, and you'll see hot garlic, tropical heat, Pure Bull dry rub, and our favorite, Huck and Fod. What's that? Huck and Fod. Go now to steersnacks.com.
Welcome to the Wildwoods, the perfect place where you can safely do everything or nothing at all. Catch a wave, take a nap, go for a drive, grab a bite. It's your vacation, and we're doing everything we can to make it a safe one. The Wildwoods. Your vacation, your way.
The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local Union 98, is a proud sponsor of The Labor Show with J. Doc and Krause every Saturday night from 6 till 8 p.m. IBEW Local 98's highly trained and superbly skilled electricians are the best in the business, setting the highest safety standards in the electrical industry. So when you're planning your next industrial, commercial, or residential project, choose an IBEW Local 98 union contractor. Learn more at ibew98.org.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
This is a key. It's a family tree. It's a pair of wings. It's a secret handshake. And a ticket to anywhere in the world. It's more than a uniform. It's the door to a world most people only dream of. There's Strong, and then there's Army Strong. Try it on at GoArmy.com.
Mag guys here on Birds 365, a Tuesday edition. Appreciate you tuning in. We still got 30 plus minutes left here on this Tuesday gathering. Waiting on Les Bowen. Damn, he's taking this retirement thing really seriously, J-Mac.
Yeah, man.
He's living a life. Who knows?
Well, he's gotten so many emails. Maybe, in the streaming world, you have to join the show instead of calling somebody up. So I just texted him. Hopefully he'll get back to me. But, he's swamped. He's big time at us now. All the thanks, Conor Orr. He's big time at us.
Do you think he's out golfing with Nick Fierro, perchance?
Yeah. You never know. But he did mention he's gotten so many emails. He's trying to get every back to everybody, which, by the way, is so interesting because I can't even picture being this beloved. All I get is angry emails. Less this, less that. I'm a little jealous of Les, to be honest.
That's one of the upsides for social media. Whatever you use, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever you're on. If you do need to talk to the masses, you can do so with one missive, and you don't have to send emails to 500 people, nor do you have to field through 500 emails that come back to you. It's just they're going to get back to you. They're going to get back to you. It's a lot easier now that we have social media, but apparently Les is going through it step by step, bit by bit, and we hope to get him up here before the show comes and goes. He did text you and say he would come on, right, Johnny Mac?
Yeah, he is trying to find the link that Xander sent him, so he is efforting to get on as we speak. Hey, he just popped up. There's Les Bowen. And so Xander, get him up as quickly as possible.
We snap our fingers and we find Les Bowen. It doesn't get any better than that. How are you this morning, Les?
I'm great, Jody. How are you?
Good. We're very good, and we do want to pass along good well wishes from Conor Orr of Sports Illustrated, who was our guest earlier, and he heard me mention that we were having himself and you on the show today, and he said, I saw the news that Les was stepping away. Look at him as a mentor and a guy I've always looked up to. So know full well Conor Orr sends his regards, same as, I don't know, these two Mac and Mac guys that you said you'd hop on with. We appreciate you coming on board.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, and I was just saying, Les, while we were waiting for you to hop on, I'm jealous. You got so much love. I open up my email, all I get is hate. So I can't picture being as beloved as Les Bowen is right now. So
I'm amazed. Clearly I should not have retired if I'm this good.
Yeah, make sure you forward all those emails to your now former bosses.
I've thought about that. Yeah.
Well, I think you should think about it some more. Why was now the time for you to step back from all the great hard work you put in on the Eagles over the years?
Oh, a lot of reasons. I kind of was thinking next year would be a good time when I'd be 66 for Social Security and all that stuff. I wanted to get in one good year, normal year, without the Zooms and the, pandemic restrictions and so forth. But my wife's retiring this year from teaching. And we have a new regime in the sports department at the Inquirer that's going to be very different, not necessarily bad or anything, but.
Les froze up on us.
Les froze up on us. Oh, and that's a great picture of him, too. Can you capture that and save that? That would be phenomenal.
I was going hopefully it pops back, and probably Les got on late, so it's probably not the best Wi-Fi. It's always good to plug in, but I was going to say, and I assume, Jody, that Les lost in rock, paper, scissors.
Oh,
no.
To Sirianni, he's never won. What
exactly.
You can't do that to me. You've got me believing that Nick Sirianni has never won anything. So how could he beat Les Bowen at rock, paper, scissors?
A retirement match of rock, paper, scissors. That's what I assumed went on. Now, Les is going to tell us the story. So it's not a retirement loss to Nick Sirianni in rock, paper, scissors.
No, not that. No, we never got around to that. Sadly, it's one of those great one of the great what might have happened.
What ifs? Yeah.
Philadelphia sports history. But no, it was new regime in the sports department. Not a bad thing, but I'd worked for someone there that I'd known for more than 35 years. At 65, proving yourself to a new boss and maybe reinventing yourself somehow if he has new ideas. You guys have all been through stuff like this,
sure.
It just didn't, it didn't appeal to me that much. And then, all that said, I would have still done it, but they came up with this buyout package. Like a lot of media companies, I think the Inquirer and Daily News combined a few years ago. There's a lot of staff, a lot of older staff, because so many of us are boomers, and it's, they offered me basically, I wanted to work until like spring, early summer next year, and they offered to pay me for that without me doing the work. So, seemed like a good thing.
Les, I'm hoping you're not going to Florida that quickly. You are going to be here through training camp. Is that sort of the transition period?
Well, I'm not going to be working at training camp. And that's fine with me because, frankly, after I've done 19 training camps, and that's kind of enough. Standing out there in August getting, skin cancer is, it's
not the most
something I like.
positive part.
I love the season. I wish I could just fast forward and cover the season again, but you can't have everything, And I really am curious about Nick Sirianni's first year and what it's going to be like. But I'm kind of on vacation now. So if they trade Zach Ertz, I might have to jump in or something like that. But I'm kind of done.
Okay.
Oh, but that's disappointing because I wanted to have the opportunity to say goodbye over the summer. So I'll do it here. And by the way, we're going to keep calling you. So if you don't go to Florida, I'm going to keep texting you to come up.
No interest in Florida. I grew up in North Carolina. Florida is hot and it smells bad.
Now, it's interesting, Les, because I did not know, you mentioned your wife, she was hired first.
Yeah.
And then you kind of forced yourself into the building and never left. Tell that story. That's a great story.
That's kind of the story of my life. It was really kind of the same way with my first job in Charlotte. Although I wasn't married, I started working in Charlotte at the paper when I was 19, when I was a sophomore in college. Just sort of answering phones and stuff and getting dinner for people, who were working on the desk and things like that. And I kind of weaseled my way in there and got hired when I graduated from college full time. But then I'd been there about 5 years full time. And I met my wife, married my wife there in Charlotte and at the Observer. And she got a job at the Inquirer. And we were still really young at the time. And I felt like, okay, I've got to come up here with my wife. If nobody hires me, I'll go to graduate school or something. I wasn't that worried about it. But I got what was supposed to be a temporary job at the Daily News as a copy editor. Ended up copy editing for about 5 years, which was really good for me because coming from Charlotte, which at that time was not a major league market in any sport. There was no Hornets, there was no Panthers. It was NASCAR and the ACC, was everything down there.
And Ric Flair.
Yeah, Ric Flair. Yeah. And minor league baseball. There was a AA Orioles affiliate. But, other than that, you ended up interviewing like 12-year-old tennis players and stuff in the summer, I just wasn't, it was not a market like this market. It still isn't, frankly, for a lot of reasons that people would be bored to hear about. But, 5 years of editing and reading Mark Wicker, Ray Didinger, Rich Hoffman, Stan Hochman, people like that really kind of prepared me for writing in this market. And I needed that. I really did. It worked out very, very well.
That's great to hear. I need to answer this question because I've only been a radio guy. They got me doing YouTube now, which is basically the same as radio, except you look at the camera. But I've never been a writer in my entire life. You two guys have been. Did you sign a no-compete, Les, when you signed your last contract with the Daily News? Are there any restrictions? If there was a website that came to you and said, Les Bowen, we can't believe you're not going to be covering Eagles this year. We'd like you to do that for us. Could you, would you? Give us the breakout on the contract stuff.
That's an excellent question. I haven't really signed any of the documents yet because I'm technically on vacation until August 1st. And I think closer to that date, they'll have me sign a bunch of stuff. I don't know what the restrictions will be. I'm hoping there aren't any. I guess it would depend on what I was asked to do. I would love to have an outlet to still write about things, but I really don't want to be like, I'm out at dinner and I've got to rush to my laptop because they signed the 3rd round draft pick. I don't need to do that anymore. But, I am interested in doing some writing, not on a, 8 hour a day, 5 day a week basis, but I am interested in doing some things here and there. So, yeah, if anybody's listening to this and has such plans,
throw it out there just in case.
I'm amenable. Yes.
Yeah. I don't think you're going to have a problem there, Les. I do want to talk about your career. And for people who don't know, Les covered the Flyers for a very long time before he switched over to the Eagles. So when you look back at your career covering sports in Philadelphia, whether it is Flyers, Eagles, What did you enjoy the most? Obviously, the draft picks and sort of the grind of the daily stuff is not that fun. But what was the fun part for you?
Well, the games I always, and there again, this is one of the reasons it's probably a good time for me to step away. I think game stories have gone the way of the dodo bird in journalism. And editors always talk about them as being recaps of the game. That's not ever what I tried to do. I always tried to place, particularly with the Eagles, where there's only 16 of them in a year. What you do is you put into the mosaic of the season how this fits what has happened previously and what was expected, and you weave all that together with what you saw, and that's one of the things I thought I was good at. I wasn't good at that much, but I thought I did that well. And that was big to me. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the big events, for a long time when budgets were different at the Daily News. I'd go to the Super Bowl for the week, even if the Eagles weren't there, which usually they weren't, and combines and drafts and things like that, the league meetings. It's great from an informational standpoint, but it's also, there's a camaraderie, as you guys know, with other journalists, and you hang out with people that you get to know over the years, and you renew those acquaintances. And it's kind of it's almost your work family, because you don't really work in a newsroom the way that some news reporters do, where you show up every day and sit at a desk. I've done most of my work either at home or at NovaCare the last 19 years. So, that's your group, your cohort. And I'll miss that quite a bit. And when I covered hockey, that was because you spend so much time on the road, that group was probably a stronger group for me than the football group. And, I miss those days quite a bit.
Let me follow up there. And this is a personal judgment / statement followed by a question for you. You've been a travel with the team, go on the road, have to talk to guys day in and day out reporter. I've not. I've been a talk show host, and I get guys on as guests periodically, but my own personal experience is hockey guys are easier to deal with than football guys. They're just better interviews, more laid back, more accessible than football players are. That's my belief. I want you to either confirm or deny. If you agree, why do you think that is? Why do you think hockey players are more accessible, more relatable, more easy to get information and maybe a taste of personality out of them?
Well, I would say, Jody, first of all, it was certainly true when I covered hockey, but that was nearly 20 years ago now. I don't really know what today's players are like. But from the days I knew versus the football players I've known, I don't think football players are terrible. But in fact, I think the sport probably you've had the most engagement with, baseball. Those are the worst guys in the world to me. I did do some of that, and it was miserable. But the hockey, you're talking about a lot of guys, and you don't want to generalize too much, but some come from rural backgrounds. They haven't spent their whole lives in the spotlight being showered with praise and gifts. And, a lot of them got up at 4 a.m. on farms in Saskatchewan and stuff like that. It's just a different culture they were raised in, I think. It's also, a lot of them understand that it's still a bit of a niche sport here in the United States. When I started covering hockey, I'm from North Carolina. I can't skate 5 feet. I don't know. I had very little idea about a left-handed shot or a right-handed shot from the point or any of that stuff. And in some sports, i.e. baseball, if you don't really know the intricacies, people act like you've, committed a sacrilege. They don't want to talk to you. They make fun of you. It's just the worst thing in the world. But hockey, I think they kind of expect that. And they sort of go out of their way to sell the game a little bit, to be, to be the face of their organization or whatever. I think it's just a kind of a, the way the sport fits into sports life has a lot to do with that. And I don't know if it's as true as it used to be. That's why I said, I don't know about today. The money, that was one thing. I mean, when I first started covering the Flyers, a lot of those guys, maybe the good players made like $300,000, $400,000 a year. They weren't zillionaires. That's less true today, but it's probably more true than in some sports that the money is a little more relatable.
Les, that's interesting. When you look at the industry as a whole, and you've been around for a long time, you've seen many shifts along the way. I was always taught write about people, not about sports. And now you have sort of this shift. You kind of mentioned it with hockey and baseball, with the advanced analytics, and people look down on you. And, in football, it's the X's and O's, and you got almost technical manuals out there trying to break down the film. How much is that sort of, I don't want to say dampen, but changed the industry as a whole?
It really has. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. It's very valid, but it's just not what I grew up wanting to do. I mean, it's just not my frame of reference. You mentioned hockey. If I were to cover hockey again, I'd have to figure out what Corsi is and all this stuff, that I don't want to know. I mean, it's the same way with the X's and O's. I can kind of get through that if I have to do it in a story. I always have to look up to remind myself exactly which, what a 3 technique is and the 5 gap. I mean, I it's just not that. It doesn't move me. It's not. And I think also with the access to game tape, everybody wants to be a film analyst now. But about 1 out of every 10 actually know what the hell they're claiming they know when they look at this film, and I find that kind of aggravating, frankly. But, it's a different, and another thing, in the coming years, you guys know this, the whole betting thing is going to become something that people write about in and of itself. And here again, not something that really interests me that much in terms of a writing subject. I just don't want to write about odds and overs and unders and things like that. And nothing wrong with people who do, but not me. No.
All right. Since you went there and used this specific word, you formulated my follow-up question. Odd, not odds, but just odd. Who is the player who you covered over your many years, hockey, football, either way, who is just odd, who you couldn't get a grasp on? You think you're a pretty good judge of people's personalities and the like. I do. John does. We all do. If we're in this business, we think we can read between the lines with personalities and guys just by the answers they give us when we ask them questions. Who was someone who just rung odd to you that you could never figure out, that Les Bowen was going to get to the bottom of it and you never did?
That's an interesting question, and one that I could probably ponder for quite a while.
Get used to it, because if you're going to do this retirement thing for sure, this question is going to be repeated to you 20 times over the next 2 months.
Well, one guy that certainly, is an easy answer there is Danny Watkins, the Eagles' first-round draft in 2011. Who presented, I did a lot with him that year. I went to British Columbia after he was drafted and talked to, the story was, of course, that he had been a firefighter in Kelowna, British Columbia, which is a beautiful place in the wine country of British Columbia on a big lake. He had been a firefighter there as a teenager and had gone down to junior college in California to get a firefighting certificate. And it turned out to be a 2-year school that produced a lot of football talent. Aaron Rodgers went there, and they talked him into playing football because he was huge and nimble, and he got a scholarship to Baylor and protected RG3's blind side and became a first-round talent. And he presented himself as this really, hard-working, smart, solid, salt of the earth, kind of like what we were talking about with Canadian hockey players, guy that was going to, he had a few the fact that he hadn't played the game until he was 21 was a bit of a problem, and the fact that he was 26 when he was drafted might have been a bit of a problem. But everybody thought, even scouts from other teams, it wasn't just the Eagles, that he would be a solid cog that you could plug in there for 5-10 years. And it turned out they made it had to play guard in the NFL because his body type wasn't really a tackle body type. He wasn't long and and he got inside and he couldn't figure out how to do it. And he wasn't interested in doing it. It's kind of like what I was saying about not being interested in writing about betting or something like that.
Yeah.
He just they presented him with, okay, you're going to have to learn, how to pass off these games and which guy to take in this situation. And he just kind of looked at it and thought, nah, I don't care, and didn't do the work and failed miserably and spent all of his time hanging out at firehouses. And finally was out of the league in a couple of years, and he got some money out of it, and now he fights fires in a suburb of Dallas, no less. I tried to do a story on that, by the way. This year was the 10th anniversary of that draft, and Danny, through his agent, password that he had no interest in talking to me about it. Even though, I did that big story on him when he was drafted. I knew his parents from that. It wasn't like we were adversaries. But, weird guy. Don't quite get why, what he was being asked to do wasn't nuclear physics. Why you wouldn't, even if your heart is in firefighting, you'll have plenty of time to fight fires, when you're 35 or so. Why not have an NFL career? Why not learn the things you need to learn and do the things you need to do and be a success at that, rather than being remembered as one of the most colossal failures in the history of your franchise? I'd love to talk to him about that. I don't know what his, if this was something, if it was always a con, if he went into the draft thinking, I'm not going to really do this, but I'm going to get some money, or if it just sort of developed, if he kind of got out there with Howard Mudd and thought, oh my God, I can't do this, and was miserable until they got rid of him. I don't know.
And Les, that's why coaches always talk about loving ball. You got to figure out if somebody loves ball. But you use the word there, adversary. You were not an adversary of Danny Watkins. Adversarial used to be a hallmark of journalism, not as much today, but you've had a lot of press conference moments over the years. Any of them stand out with any of the Eagles coaches?
Yeah. The one that stands out because on a radio show, they really make a big deal out of this all the time, and it was a total misconception, misunderstanding. We were in New Orleans at the Superdome. It was the first time the Eagles had been there since Hurricane Katrina, and things were still kind of weird at the Superdome, and they had the visiting coaches post-game press conference in a sort of little locker room that was like for cheerleaders or some such. And Andy Reid was at the far end of this long, narrow place, and the cameras and the reporters were at the back, and he starts talking. And they have, you guys know, but the listeners probably know, there's something called a mult box where they plug in the microphone, and, he's talking over the broadcast. But there was no amplifier for the people in the room. So people listening at home on Comcast or whatever could hear Andy Reid, but people in the room who were like 30 feet away, Andy's a very kind of soft-spoken person in these situations, couldn't hear a word he was saying. So I was like panicking. It's after the game. I've got a deadline. I have no idea. He's standing up there, and I see his mouth moving. So Derek Boyko, at that time, the Eagles PR person, is standing next to Andy, and I'm wildly pantomiming to Derek, like, what? We can't hear him. We can't hear him. Andy sees me and thinks I'm making faces at him, and says, "You got a problem, Les?" Which became a huge thing. And, of course, Derek explained it to him afterwards, and we all laughed about it, but it became like, Andy Reid angry at Les Bowen. He was just puzzled at why I was making faces. but I wasn't. I was making faces because I couldn't hear him. There were a lot of things like that over the years that stick out to me. A lot of them with Andy, frankly.
Then that, as a matter of fact, I'll take the hit for that. I should have got you on my show that week so you could explain that story and make it less of a story than it became. All right, last one for me, Les. Got to get one Eagle opinion out of before we let you go for the day. My partner, John McMullen, and other guys that we've had on who cover the Eagles have said close to the same thing. Nick Sirianni, 3 weeks in, 4 weeks in, 6 weeks in, 8 weeks in, half season, a little bit more, a little too big an impression to be a first impression. But that it's either going to go really well for Nick Sirianni or it's really going to go pretty poorly for Nick Sirianni. That the middle ground is probably not where he's going to land. Either the Eagles are going to win some games and he's going to be rah-rah and the players and the fans are going to buy into it, or they're going to get off to a really bad start and people are going to go, we can't have this high school guy coaching the Philadelphia Eagles. If you're going to one of the two opposite ends, which is more likely? Nick Sirianni, quick cult hero, or Nick Sirianni, quick ticket out of town?
I want to see him do well. He's so enthusiastic and so exuberant, and we've not had that, frankly, coaching the Eagles in the time that I've been around them. Nothing against anybody that's coached the Eagles, but that was not Andy's personality. It was not Chip Kelly's personality. It was not Doug's personality. This is going to be like having like a John Gruden or Ted Lasso coaching Ted
Lasso, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if he really knows what I think he's smart, though. I really do. Having gotten to talk to him several times now, I don't think he's a dummy just because he's bubbly and enthusiastic. The thing is, though, he's so ahead of where you might think he would be in his coaching career. And this is also the case with so many of his assistants. I'm just struck by, if you look at their resumes and what they were doing 5 years ago, they were like getting coffee for people. That's the boom or bust thing here is, do these people know how to do this? I think they're intelligent. I think the players all talked all spring. You heard them, John, about, it's amazing. The coaches are so involved. They're in the drills, running the drills with the players because they're young enough to do that, and, there's so much fire and so much intensity that could turn very well. It could be Dick Vermeil, except Dick Vermeil came here as the UCLA coach who was nationally famous, not as a guy who, was barely a coordinator for a couple of years. So I have no idea, but I'm pulling for the guy. I just think he's a good person, and I'm kind of, one of the regrets I have is to be in a post-game press conference and have a guy who actually wants to talk about stuff and explain stuff would be a new experience for me.
That's true. Nick does want to talk about it. It's interesting. He goes, and I wonder how quickly the Eagles PR beats that out of him and see how they can get it out of him. But
there's kind of a new regime there with Bob Lang coming back.
Yeah, Bob's great.
I think Bob feels this is a little bit inside baseball for the listeners. They don't care, but I think Bob wants to have a better relationship with the media and for the team to be a little less closed in that regard. So we'll see if that happens. It'd be nice.
Yeah, we'll see. You got to believe, to use Ted Lasso, and I believe in Les Bowen, and I want to congratulate you on a phenomenal career. And we're not going to stop calling you Les. I'm not going to stop texting you. I want to get you on Birds 365. But again, congratulations. What a wonderful ride. Thrilled for you. And I hope you and your wife have a great retirement.
Well, thank you so much, both of you. I really enjoy doing this. I'm glad to do it anytime you want.
And I just spoke to our boss, Joe Krause, and he said, feel free to go ahead and double what you paid Les Bowen for coming on the show so far. So appreciate it. And the check is in the mail, but you got a lot of downtime. Don't actually wait by the mailbox for it.
Yeah.
Les, great stuff. We appreciate it. We're very much looking forward to talking to you going forward, my friend. Enjoy some downtime, big guy.
Thanks, fellas.
That is Les Bowen, formerly, painful to say, formerly of the Daily News and the Inquirer. Has done a great job covering the Eagles over these last years, and he will be missed. All right, we will not miss out on putting a bow on the show. Only got a couple of minutes left. Stay right here on Birds 365.
I get scared sometimes.
Of a lot of things.
Joining in.
Decisions.
The dark.
The dark.
But I once heard someone say,
But as I always say,
it's okay to be afraid.
as long as you face the fear.
And keep moving forward.
Wherever you are in life, count on the name trusted in insurance for over 80 years. Independence Blue Cross.
The savoring taste of a good bag of beef jerky is so enjoyable at any time of the day, as long as you can find it. Here's what we suggest. Pure Bull Beef Jerky is our answer, and soon it will be yours. Locally produced in the Philadelphia region, this high-quality, healthy protein snack is easy to secure. Go to steersnacks.com, and you'll see hot garlic, tropical heat, Pure Bull dry rub, and our favorite, Huck and Fod. What's that? Huck and Fod. Go now to steersnacks.com.
Welcome to the Wildwoods, the perfect place where you can safely do everything or nothing at all. Catch a wave, take a nap, go for a drive, grab a bite. It's your vacation, and we're doing everything we can to make it a safe one. The Wildwoods. Your vacation, your way.
The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local Union 98, is a proud sponsor of The Labor Show with J. Doc and Krause every Saturday night from 6 till 8 p.m. IBEW Local 98's highly trained and superbly skilled electricians are the best in the business, setting the highest safety standards in the electrical industry. So when you're planning your next industrial, commercial, or residential project, choose an IBEW Local 98 union contractor. Learn more at ibew98.org.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on three. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
This is a key. It's a family tree. It's a pair of wings. It's a secret handshake. And a ticket to anywhere in the world. It's more than a uniform. It's the door to a world most people only dream of. There's Strong, and then there's Army Strong. Try it on at GoArmy.com.
All right, again, we need to thank Les Bowen for coming on. I want to thank Conor Orr from Sports Illustrated as well, who was also very good. Thank both of our guests, and they both did a great job for us today. Ran a little late with Les, because what can you tell you? We're reminiscing, he's a bud, and we truly will miss him. So there is not much time left on the show. I want to end on this note, John McMullen. How smart is your dog?
Very smart. The smartest dog in the world, I might say.
Okay. So
everybody's got the best dog. They always do. And everybody's right, Jody. Dogs are great.
And I got a good dog, really good dog. I don't know if he's the best dog in the world, but he's great by me, or she's great by me. And she's smart. Over the last couple of weeks, it's happened in 2 weeks, it's happened 4 or 5 times. I hear her coming down the steps from my basement where I'm broadcasting from at like 9:50 something. Because she knows that it's almost 10 o'clock and the old man's going to be able to get her out at 10 o'clock.
Oh, yeah. My dog
couldn't tell time till I was like 12 years old. But how the hell does my dog know what time it is?
My dog knows exactly when I get off the air. Knows exactly I'm coming. Knows exactly it's time to go out again. Always knows when it's time to be fed. She knows that. It's amazing her time skills.
She knows the time better than me. And that's rather obvious because it looks like we're going to run over today. As we do because we have good guests on and we like hanging around with them and shooting a breeze with them. As suggested, we will have Les Bowen on during the year. I enjoy his football opinion, even though he's not going to be covering the team on a day-in, day-out basis like he has the last few years for the Daily News and the Inquirer. It doesn't matter. Les Bowen knows his football, and we are going to continue to have him on. Partner, kick back, relax, enjoy, take the dog out, don't do too much work. Save yourself up for 22 hours from now.
I got to retire, Chatty.
You and I aren't going anywhere. We got another solid week of Birds 365 coming. Yeah. The week after that, we'll see. But they're not ready to get rid of us just yet. Buddy, we'll be back here in 22 hours. I'll talk to you then.
Looking forward to it.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube,